10 to 53, how a slave with a destroyed soul began to take revenge. Darkness of the future, horror fantasy.
I, Anastasia, am the author of unique and fascinating stories. Subscribe and like. I have many stories for every taste.
I don't know what year it was, 1861, 1965, or 2648. It didn't seem to matter to me. I don't know my name, but I was given the identification number 10-53, and I don't remember anyone close to me but Heather. The name came to me like an obsessive thought. I don't remember being captured. The last coherent memory I have is like fragments of a restless dream. The slavers injected me with a drug while they held me down. It irreversibly disrupts my brain, turning me into an eternally obedient, benevolent, and emotionless slave. I can't remember how I knew this, but the sensations mirrored the effects of a concussion, dull in my senses and causing pain. But they used the pain as a means to remind me of their dominance and to tell me when I was doing something wrong. I didn't scream in pain, but the unpleasant sensation remained. First Officer Muncha, a sturdy woman of medium height, with a flat face, long straight hair, and a straight fringe above her eyebrows, once so mutilated, 1055 and 1072, with a pelletizer that they were permanently rendered human. Captain Monk, a bearded man in his 50s, concealing his excellent physical condition, personally lectured Muncha never to damage the goods again. Since then, she has worked to better control her impulses. The pelletizer, a non-lethal weapon designed specifically for the subjugation of slaves, causes such intense pain that it renders them immobile. The pellets ejected penetrate the skin and break bones, becoming a permanent part of the slave's body. The drug administered to me did not impair my cognitive functions, so I was able to perform highly complex tasks on the starship Monty. Tasks that I probably could have performed before I was enslaved. I consistently repaired electronic equipment, cleaned weapons, serviced toilets, made beds, but I was never allowed to cook or do any life-threatening activities. Among the slaves were also 1054, 1055, 1056, 1057, 1058, 1059, 1060, 1061, 1062, 1063, 10-64, 10-65, 10-66, 10-67, 10-68, 10-69, 10-70. Women and men of various ages, as well as 2 children. A boy numbered 10-71 and a girl numbered 10-72. I was always greeted more severely than the others, and the intonations of the people addressing me were similar to communicating in a commanding voice with a dog. I was allowed to take up arms as soon as I arrived on the ship, because they had complete confidence in what the drug had done to me. However, despite the complete destruction of my soul, any impulses of desire that were once in my brain and my human needs remained with me. I was smarter than any member of the crew and smarter than any slave. I concluded this from the fact that no one present could do all the tasks that I did. Each specialized in his area of responsibility, and also from listening to the constant discussions of the crew about how much money they would get for me, which was not said about the other slaves. Heather. This name often pops into my head like an obsessive thought, and in these seconds, I want to bend over, covering my head, for some reason, exhale all the air from my lungs and never inhale again. Sometimes it sounds like someone else's voice, and I reflexively turn around into a dimly lit corridor where there is usually no one. Although I have no need for self-preservation, there's no reason to destroy myself either. Survival is rational, and I decided to do everything necessary for my continued functioning. Daily personal hygiene, taking care of myself to look good in the opinion of living people. Daily light exercise, reading technical literature and encyclopedias. Slaves usually do not do this unless they are specifically ordered and reminded. And this really looks very strange from the side of the living. So Muncha is afraid of me and expresses his displeasure to the rest of the team. I was even checked several times in the medical bay on a brain scanner. And each time, Dr. Gamaon, increasingly tired and irritated, reported that the drug worked perfectly on me. There were no noticeable changes, and my behavior was determined not by my old habits, but by rational choice. And anyway, this is the last examination of 1053 on this matter. This is an order from the ship's doctor. What seemed strange to me in the behavior of such a crew was that not a single slave was used for satisfying sexual needs. Slaves do not care. They have no needs. Only once did one woman from the crew ask me a question. Do you really not feel excitement when I touch you? No. Then she frowned, quickly got up and left, and never asked me such questions again, preferring to have fun with the crew, not with the goods. It is also important to note that we were all allowed to freely walk around the ship, attend tactical meetings, negotiations, and even witness one of the crew members having sex. We were things to them. Every evening, when the day shift went to rest and the evening shift began its duties, immediately after reporting for duty, we prepared the room, washed the floors, freshened the crew's beds. After these tasks, we went to bed. The drug that turned the human brain into the brain of a slave did not change this need. One day, I was awakened by a scream that eerily resembled my own. Heather. Quickly opening my eyes, I looked at the crew's reactions, trying to determine the cause of the commotion. Nicole, James, Jeremy, and Michael were watching an animated film. They did not pay attention to me. Therefore, there is no cause for concern. Getting out of bed and straightening the sheet, since slaves do not have blankets, I went to the sanitary room to quickly clean up. At this moment, Nicole called out, 53. I'm here, I answered Nicole, waiting for her command. Prepare for disembarkation, we are landing. I see, Nicole. I read in an old encyclopedia that the primary motive of man is survival. This is a property of all living matter, and since slaves have no need for self-preservation, they are called dead souls, while non-slaves are called living people. I realized that although I have no memory of myself, I was alive. But since my body and most of my brain are functioning, I am in fact still a living person, just forcibly deprived of something important, like crippled arms or legs. Reproduction is considered the second most important motive of existence, but humans have elevated it to a hedonistic practice. Much human behavior revolves around it, and, for example, respect is part of the social proof of a person's worth. When I try to increase respect and call the living by name, most people like it and treat me better, because the name means something. Captain Monk once told me that this is a good habit for a slave to have, increasing his value. They expected the highest bidder to pay for me, but each bid brought forth a storm of arguments about how I could be sold for more, and the auction dragged on. I was not interested in the money or the benefits of the slavers. I simply logically deduced the benefits of socially acceptable behavior for me as an organism. No, there were no impulses for self-preservation yet. However, I clearly understood my goal. I was faced with the difficult task of replacing my lost nature with logic. With this idea in mind, I secretly talked to the other slaves. Once they were all living people, burdened with dreams, immersed in their needs, desires, experiences, and now they were forcibly taken away. At the exit from the sanitary room, I was met by 1063, a fragile and short woman with a short haircut and dull, indifferent eyes. You should see this. Find yourself a task when you leave the ship. Then she went straight to the ship's cook. The job of a ship's cook is rather strange, since all a cook does is simply press a couple of buttons on the fabricator and distribute food first to the crew and only then to the slaves, because for some reason the living are irritated by the sight of a slave eating. In my opinion, it is a useless job, since anyone can press the right buttons to get food at any time. When I asked 1063 what they actually do, she told me that they serve food, wash dishes, and create a kind of restaurant effect. Apparently, not all human social needs are rational, and this led me to the idea that slavery, enshrined in the laws of corpuscular star systems, exists because slaves do the job more efficiently than the living. They make ideal soldiers who know neither mercy nor fear, tirelessly serving the personnel, workers, and others, freeing up the time and labor of the living, allowing them to indulge in the vices of their nature. 1063 agreed with my conclusions, as did 1057, a large and very strong man, but with a thin voice, and 1067, a strong woman with short hair. I chose them as my most useful allies. I, 10-57, 10-63, and 10-67 agreed to follow the general principle of compensation with reason for what is lost. We agreed that we needed to leave the ship because if we were free, that is what we would reason. The captain pointed somewhere inside the ship from where several crew members ran out with pellet guns. They started shooting pellet guns at the legs of those running to take them whole. When I reached the building, I saw Muncha looking in my direction, and the captain, when he finished giving orders to the crew, approached Muncha and also began to watch. I did not immediately enter the building, watching the capture of runaway slaves to understand the situation. Almost all of the remaining were caught, but some managed to hide behind a hill, and the captain shouted something to two pursuers, who stopped, caught their breath, and headed towards the ship. Then I decided to go inside. In the floor, I saw a poorly lit corridor going down. This was the only way, so I headed there. I walked for quite a long time, about 20 minutes, constantly turning around in anticipation of pursuers. They probably know this place better than me and set a trap. But the hallway was the worst place without cover, so I hurried. Ahead of me was a fork in two directions, right and left. Heather ... The sobbing voice was clear, loud, as if someone was standing just around the corner to the right. I turned toward the sound and came out onto a narrow suspension bridge over some abandoned workshop with giant green machines the size of a 3-story building. There were also double doors with frosted windows. They looked like the entrance to the research labs in the factory. From around the corner, I heard the distinct echo of heavy steel footsteps, indicating the presence of two people dressed in armored spacesuits. Apparently, Monk considered me the main threat and decided not to endanger human lives. Reacting quickly, I ran into the lab, threw open the door, rushed inside, and quickly locked it. Realizing that the fragile door would not withstand the blows of armored slavers, I quickly dragged the furniture, strengthening the entrance by leaning the shelves against the door. The lab was damp and stuffy, but warm. There were computer monitors on the tables, and who knows how long they had been working. The corpses of employees were sitting in chairs. Some were lying on the floor. It seemed they were trying to escape. I approached the table. On the working monitor under the logo of the experimental lab, I saw the current date and time. 11:53, December 11th, 3038. I felt warmth in my chest. Something pleasant, something good. I don't remember ever feeling this, and something suddenly pricked me. Something in my chest spread with a sour feeling. Is this a reaction to the date? Heather. A barely audible whisper was heard from the chair. Approaching the chair, I saw an icon on the skeleton's chest. It said, Dr. Heather R.B. There was an old pistol lying on the floor to my right, which I picked up to examine. The same inscription, Dr. Heather R.B. on the barrel. Suicide. 5 more bullets left. My heart began to beat faster. I did not understand what was happening to me. As if through the stone of eternal anesthesia, my own long agony was breaking through, and with it a vague memory of Heather. Echoes of past rage and despair sounded in my head, and a feeling of hatred inexorably burned in my chest. Anything but this. I remembered. I loved her, but Heather chose not to surrender to the slavers. 2 men burst into the office. With a steel gate, they slowly walked towards me, holding granulators in their hands. I turned half a turn. Oh, those smug smiles on their faces. I grinned too. Quickly aiming the gun at Jeremy's head, I fired. The second, Michael, reflexively raised the pellet gun, shot me in the stomach, and I fell. A terrible pain flared up inside me, but I fired again. Michael jumped to the side, out of sight. 53, I order you to put your weapon down, freak, Michael shouted from cover. The pain suddenly went away. This shouldn't happen. Pellets usually last a long time. I quickly crawled behind the table. An instant before the pellet gun, which Michael fired blindly, fired. I fired 2 shots in the direction where Michael was hiding, 2 metallic echoes, and a loud panicked grunt with each shot. Wait, I surrender. Don't shoot, Michael shouted. I climbed onto the table, towering over Michael, looking down at him. He hunched over, awaiting his fate. A shot to the back of the head left Michael where he was. Taking the pelletizer from him, I left the office, turning immediately to the right. There was an exit to the giant second platform. Radio waves could not penetrate this metal-enclosed abyss, which is why the outside team was not aware of what was happening. I couldn't help but smile, although it was a smile devoid of emotion. After a short run to the airtight door, I threw it open. 2 people were standing just outside, without any armor. I aimed and fired the pelletizer at the first, hitting him in the chest, and he doubled over, howling in pain. The second tried to run, leaving his fallen comrade behind. I waited patiently for the pelletizer to charge, then fired a second shot. He immediately lost consciousness. I couldn't remember the purpose of the buildings lining the street, but they were clearly functional. Running toward the fence surrounding these buildings, the first barrier was made of standard mesh, showing signs of wear. The second fence, constantly bathed in powerful current, served as protection from radioactive particles. In the distance, I spotted Monk, Muncha, and 3 others. It seemed they had left their pelletizers on the ship, unaware that their plans were about to take an unexpected turn. However, Monk had taken the captain's console with him. When he spotted me, he used the console to disable my pelletizer. I ran away from them along the electric fence. The 3 officers were pursuing me. As the 3 approached me, I tried to hit the first with the pellet gun, but he intercepted it, and the other 2 tried to knock me down. Throwing the pellet gun away, I pushed one into the fence, where a powerful electric discharge killed him instantly. The others recoiled in shock from the charred corpse. The pellet gun lay on the ground. Grabbing it by the barrel, I swung and hit the second officer, then kicked the third. Both fell into the fence, suffering the same fate as the first. Muncha kept her distance, and I threw the pellet gun away and ran from them. The captain shouted from afar, "Phosphorus!" Muncha pulled a disc from her belt and threw it in my direction. It exploded behind me, and shrapnel pierced my back and right arm. I crawled away from them in agony. The pain was intense, burning, incessant, spreading throughout my entire body. My body was rapidly breaking down. "Heather," I said through the pain. "I told you so," Muncha said smugly to the captain as he approached. "That bastard! He killed my boys," Captain Monk growled through his teeth. He grabbed my pelletizer and slammed it into my back. The phosphorus grenade burned through my back, and I didn't feel the pain of the blows. Lying on my stomach, I struggled to turn my head toward my tormentors. "Brian," a thin female voice rang out. Monk stopped and looked around nervously with Muncha. The voice seemed to be coming from everywhere. They heard it too. "Heather?" I asked. "Brian?" The thin voice echoed deeper, and heavy bolts of lightning began to strike from the fence. "What the?" Muncha exclaimed, falling dead. "Muncha?" Monk turned to her, a few seconds before the lightning struck him too. "Heather ... I said with the last of my strength before I lost consciousness. As I fell into the darkness, I heard my favorite voice one last time. "Brian, you came back to me."